I mean, you've been in the industry for so long. What are the various roles that are available in the pharmaceutical industries for doctors?
Okay. So I think primarily today for doctors, most pharma companies I notice, and I think a lot of companies are actually taking on medical or medically qualified people. Okay. So, and most of these companies have a function or a department known as medical affairs. So I used to head this department, for many years. So doctors can apply for roles into medical affairs, for the different companies when, companies advertise for these roles, right? So that's one role, a role for a doctor in medical affairs. Normally they would be designated as, okay, so we've got this position now, which over the last few years, we're seeing more and more, which is a medical scientific liaison or an MSL for short. Now, what an MSL does, primarily is, they're out there talking to healthcare professionals, giving them the scientific evidence about the medicines, both the disease and the medicines. And they spend a bit more time out on the field, as we say, right? Speaking to the relevant specialists and doctors. So you've got these MSL positions. Then some companies offer positions called medical advisors, right? So medical advisors, again, sort of similar to the MSLs, but maybe spend a bit more time in the office or spend a bit more time internally, looking at, strategies for the medicine, scientific evidence, generating more evidence around the medicine. So medical advisors, medical managers, maybe, other areas. So all this sit within the medical affairs function. Some people have asked me, can I be a medical director? No, you just can't be a medical director for a company overnight. You sort of have to come through the path, right? The path. So this is for doctors who want to apply. I think this would be your first point, right? Trying to get into medical affairs of the pharmaceutical companies. Now, if this is not possible, you could also try getting into the clinical research side. So companies do hire, medically qualified. Obviously, if you have some sort of lab background or research background, makes sense. But you could also get into the clinical research side of a pharma company, right? We may not see much of it nowadays, but it's there, right? And obviously, and I can't speak for the CRO because I never worked in a clinical research organization. But just as a tip for the doctors out there, you could try, getting into a CRO or clinical research organization, and then you can always transition back into pharma later on, right? If you feel like it. So I think these are the two primary areas for doctors to get into in pharma, because once you get into pharma, then there are other career options you can take. I've known of doctors, for example, who join marketing, right? And go up the commercial ladder, so as to speak. There's, of course, also the regulatory function. It's in fact, in essence, what the regulatory team does is, when it comes to having to register one of our medicines, they get all this information from the parent company, pull together dossiers with regard to the medicine, as I said just now, efficacy, safety data, everything's put together. And then that's, given over to our regulatory agency. I have seen the odd doctor join regulatory, so that's a possibility, but more often than not, I've seen pharmacists, join this function. And maybe one other area that is a possibility is most companies have a pharmacovigilance, or we call it a safety, right, for short, right? As I said earlier, we talked about the safety of medicines. So whenever medicines are out there, and every time there happens to be a report around a side effect that may have happened, right? This gets reported back to the company, and there's a team sitting in the company, or maybe even an individual, who then, has to do the work around ensuring this report is, gotten, is documented, recorded, and then you inform your higher up at the regional or global level about this, right? So that's also a possibility. So why I say this, Selena, is I think the natural tendency for doctors out there is, okay, I'm going into medical affairs. But my advice is the medically related functions, as I just mentioned, clinical research, regulatory, pharmacovigilance, are definitely areas to be considered because it may be an avenue for the doctor to get into the company, right? and learn about a little bit about these areas. And later on, you never know, you could make a transition into medical affairs.
Okay, do any of these roles require APC?
Not to my knowledge, in the days gone by, I mean, I've hired doctors who did not have an APC. But let me disclaim that, right? Again, I go back to the point where this is my personal opinion that all doctors, you should do your service and get your full registration with the Malaysian authorities or the Malaysian Medical Council. In fact, just last week, I have a nephew, right? Who is doing his housemanship and just became an MO, etc. And this was a point I made to him: ensure that you get your registration. You are registered with the uh, MMC, the Malaysian Medical Council, because you may want to come back to practice in the future, right? And if my understanding serves me correctly, you need that. You need to be registered with MMC. Now, APC is your annual practicing certificate, right? And that's done. You get that on a yearly basis. Now, to come into pharma, no, we don't need you to have an APC, but so long as you're a qualified doctor, right? But I would really prefer that doctors do their service and then come out, right? I mean, this is me. I know doctors may be out there who may be a little bit frustrated before getting their full registration and really do want to come out. From my time, no, we didn't really, so long as you had your qualifications, right? Now whether you were registered or not, to my time, no, we didn't really look for that. But I used to be very happy if I could get doctors, who are registered. Yeah, I think it's really important, both from a career perspective as well as if you want to get into pharma. I think it would be really useful to know that you spend that time in hospital, right?
Has that changed much? Like from your time, yeah, APC is not required, but now considering there are so many more doctors that are coming out, a lot of them are seeking alternative options. Would that set someone else apart, having an APC or having a full registration?
To me, yes. I don't know so much about the APC because, if you are very certain you're not going to practicing, then because we do an APC year on year, right? So obviously, if you're GP, etc., you must have your APC, right? We've not really, at least from my time, we've not really. But I again want to emphasize, to doctors that to me it would make a difference, right? That a doctor actually gets registered, right? Goes through their service, because another point to make is, I think even if you join the industry, what I learned in hospital or my time in hospital, and again, I think my time as a GP, I think this also was a plus point for me when I applied into industry, right? I feel that they did look at the fact that I had this, because practice helps later on, even when you're in the industry, you need to be aware of, the treatment paradigms, the treatment protocols, etc. So that's why, as far as I'm concerned, I think doctors should get registered, do their practice at the hospital, and then you decide at that point in time when you want to, right? Of course, I think some things have changed today, so I'm not highly familiar with that, right? But my take is do those few years in hospital. Yeah.
Join disruptive doctors. Oh, oh, disruptive doctors. Impact.